Hello, everybody. Welcome to class 14. Today we're going to be talking about more sports that we haven't yet covered in our previous classes. Let's take it away.
So the first sport we're going to be talking about is scuba diving. Next slide, please. Scuba diving is technically considered an extreme sport just because it's more dangerous than something like tennis or track. But even though you have this statistic where like 80 or 100 people die annually in diving accidents just in North America, that's actually really not that high compared to how many people scuba dive. So that's really like 0.5 to 1.2 deaths per 100,000 people that are scuba diving at any point. So most of these attacks aren't actually like shark attacks or like any sea life attacks. It's more like you aren't really prepared well. So when you're scuba diving, your equipment somehow malfunctions or you aren't able to swim up, things like that, where you aren't really conscious of how to actually scuba dive. So if you actually know how to do the sport, you've been trained properly, then there's really no worries. It can be done competitively for research or for recreation, basically like for fun. A lot of people, when they go on vacations or if they live by a beach, will scuba dive, especially if there's like a nice coral reef. And if you're doing it for research, especially if you're like a marine biologist or somebody who wants to study fish or ecosystems, you'll be scuba diving a lot and you'll probably be working in a lab that's near the ocean. In terms of recreation, I think the highest, or not the highest, the deepest depth that you can go is like 130 feet or 40 meters on average. And then the like best possible depth that people have gone to when they're competing is 1,000 feet or 300 meters, which is super impressive because not only does that mean you're like holding your breath for a long time, but it also means that there's a lot of water pressure that's kind of like crushing your lungs. So that means you have to be really physically fit. Next slide. So scuba diving is sometimes also called free diving, but the main difference between the two is that scuba diving, sometimes you'll see people have like air tanks on them. Free diving, it's completely like based on your own breath. So men usually, if they're like a professional scuba diving, can hold their breath up to 11 minutes, which is like really, really impressive. And women can hold their breath up to 9 minutes. And I wouldn't recommend you try this. Most people who have been interviewed that can hold their breath for that long usually like practice for a long, long time. So each time they're like increasing the amount that they're holding their breath just to the brink of like dying, which isn't a great sport. But scuba diving in itself is considered an extreme sport. And one of the most famous scuba divers is called Herbert Nish, and he's achieved 33 official world records across all freediving disciplines. So that means like deep diving, that means like water rugby, and those are all considered freediving disciplines, even though they're not things that you would think of immediately. And his personal best is 702 feet or 214 meters. And this was actually the record that he got that got him the name like the world's deepest diver or like the world's deepest man, something like that. And he's most known for no limit discipline. And this is considered the most dangerous of them all because what you usually do is you have like a weight that drags you down. And then when you're going back up, you have like a gas balloon. And that's kind of like this yellow thing here. But it's super dangerous. And actually, most records, most international organizations don't count any records that are now held by no limit discipline. So it's super dangerous, but not all scuba diving has to be dangerous.
So the next sport is bowling. So the overview of this sport is classified as a target sport where you have a weighted ball, usually about the lightest ball is around 6 or 8 pounds. You use that weighted ball to roll towards a set of pins, usually a set of 10 pins, which are put in a triangle format pointed towards you. So the standard bowling equipment that most people have is a set of 10 pins, about, I guess, 20 meters down the lane, a weighted ball, as mentioned above before, and a hardwood floor with lubricated oil, which gives that like very reflective look, if you've ever been to a bowling alley before, and bowling shoes. These shoes are like special because there's some things that you can't do with regular shoes on a bowling floor. it's super slippery, and your regular shoes might not be able to uh, help you stand up properly. You might like slip a lot. So bowling shoes are preferred for this sport. So scoring. Uh, there's a lot of bowling leagues that are taking place. These are usually like pickup games, which are like just a casual game between like a group of maybe friends or strangers that just meet up once or twice every week in the same location, usually at the same time. So they usually have teams of 3 or 5 are common in these leagues. Uh, and in these teams, there's usually about 4 or 5 uh, and sorry, in the competition, there's usually 4 or 5 teams in the competition. They're competing against each other, and in these teams, you could have like singles, split by male and female, or mixed teams, which are both male and female in one team. So these teams will play against other teams. In each in each scheduled match, it's played best of 3, and in each game, points are given to the winning team, and extra point is awarded for however many pins are knocked over for the winning team, like however much more. Now these scoring system are like variation, like they vary from league to league since there's no concrete rule set. Since these are like pickup games, very relaxed, and they can change the rules according to what they agree upon.
So the next sport will be mountain climbing. So mountain climbing is also known as mountaineering. And on the right, we see a picture of a person ice climbing. This is a sport that very few people participate in because it's really dangerous. So in this sport, people try to climb to extreme heights of mountains. It's also really dangerous because there's always a chance of the tools that they're using and the equipment malfunctioning, such as like the rope snapping. And some people are trying to climb to a record height, which is also called record climbing, where they try to go as high as they can to set a record. And others will climb mountains for recreational purposes, which means for fun. And some will climb mountains for competition, such as competing against others to see who can get higher. Some equipment used in mountain climbing include carabiners, which is shown on the picture on the right, rope, and a helmet. So now I'm going to talk about a few records that have been set. So in May of 1954, Mount Everest was climbed for the first time by a human. And in May 2001, the first blind man was able to reach the summit of Mount Everest, but with a little bit of help. And in May of 2012, 234 people climbed Mount Everest on the same day and like at the same time.
Okay, so I'm going to be covering skydiving. Okay, so what is skydiving? Skydiving is basically the descent of a person to the surface from an aircraft in flight when he or she uses or intends to use a parachute during all or part of that descent. So the person who jumps off the helicopter will then open the parachute. The key elements for this are aircraft and parachute. So the aircraft, it doesn't really have to be an airplane. It can be like a hot air balloon, a microlight, a paraglider, or just basically any aircraft that can have a harness to jump from. The parachute must be present, but it doesn't have to be of any particular kind. It can be old school round or a modern ram air. Uh, um, These days, it's almost always the ladder. Um, Skydives are performed using a two parachute system, which comprises of a container, the backpack into which the fabric is folded, and two parachutes, the main canopy and the backup parachute. Um, in case the main one malfunctions. In most skydiving systems, there's a device installed which opens the reserve parachute in the eventuality that the skydiver does not or is not able to open his or her own parachute. These fall safes permit the stupendous statistical safety of skydiving. It also can be used for competitive purposes. The sport traces its beginning to the descents made from a hot air balloon in 1797, but modern skydiving is usually performed from a propeller-driven airplane. So how do you skydive? So you first have to wear the proper equipment. The harness adjusted to the passenger's body shape and the size. Instructor reviews free fall, body position, uh, arch and lift legs for landing. Relax when in a aircraft. So basically, you just look out the window and relax and calm down and just basically enjoy the view. And 10 to 30 minutes, depending on the aircraft and exit altitude. And the exit, so the instructor, like before you jump, the instructor double checks the harness to ensure it is hooked up properly and secure. The the airplane door is opened by the skydivers and passenger and instructor walk and towards the exit and just jumps. For the free fall, it lasts about like 20 to 60 seconds. It really depends on the exit altitude. And free fall, it reaches a speed upwards of 120 to 140 miles per hour. It feels more like floating than falling. There's no stomach drop sensation. Uh, Parachute ride. It is deployed at 5,500 feet by instructor and lasts 5 to 7 minutes depending on the weight of the passenger. And passengers can fly the parachute with the aid of their instructor. Uh, Landing, the instructor will fly a landing pattern, just like a aircraft would use for landing on a runway with a predetermined downwind base and final approach calculated based on the given wind direction and speed. The passenger will be instructed to lift the legs so that both can slide in on the ground. A slide in landing is the safest way to avoid injury to the ankles or the legs. So why is it important? It is mainly to like build up the upper arm strength in controlling the parachute, as well as the big muscle groups in the lower body for landing and skydiving gear around also burns energy and tones muscles. You also get to face your fear, and once you do that, you probably can like have the courage to do anything. And after that, you probably will feel like a brand new person since you conquered your fear. Since most people tend to get scared when uh, like hearing about skydiving, and it also can be to have like great views and just enjoying the nature. And once you um um wait no so psychologists say inclination of the to try high risk activities is essential for the continuation of the human species. When you skydive, you basically just focus on what you are doing and nothing else. So you basically just forget all the worries and the usual distractions in life. So this intense focus with the rush makes you feel cleansing both mentally and physically.
So we're gonna be talking about ultimate frisbee now. So what is ultimate frisbee? So it's a sport very similar to football or rugby. Um, the game itself involves catching and throwing a frisbee, and the object a frisbee is a disc-like object usually made of plastic. Like the objective of the game is to bring the frisbee to the other side of the field to score the point, and the team with the most points win. Um, the only way to move the frisbee is by throwing it to others and having them catch it. And you can't move while you have the frisbee, so it involves a lot of teamwork. Um, the defenders have to try and stop the attacking team from getting the frisbee to the other side, and they do that by like using their hands and stuff to block the frisbees. The game itself is a mostly recreational and like casual game, and there's a competitive scene, but like it's not that big. Why is ultimate frisbee important? So, ultimate frisbee helps you develop a lot of muscles in your body. For example, your arm muscles like your triceps, biceps, since you have to throw and catch tools. Also builds your core muscles and lower body muscles because it involves a lot of running. And another thing it improves is your hand-eye coordination because you have to catch the frisbees and you have to be able to throw it at where you want it to go. Um, it also involves a lot of teamwork and communication since it's a team sport and you need to rely on your team to be able to move the frisbee forward.
Hello and welcome to my slides. So I'm going to be talking about handball, specifically team handball. All right, here's the overview. Team handball, it's also known as field ball or just handball. It's usually played between two teams. The teams can either consist of either 7 or 11 players, depending on what version you're playing. And with the general gist of the game, you're usually trying to pass around a decently small inflated ball to each other, and you're passing it down the court to each other and smacking it around, and you're trying to get it into the other team's goal. That is the basic gist of it. And at the other side, of course, as I've already mentioned, there are two goals. They are very big, very rectangular shape. As you will see in the next couple of pictures, you'll see that these goals are quite big and that the players who play this sort of sport have to do a lot of running, do a lot of jumping, doing a lot of mainly hand-eye coordination, one of the key factors that are taking place in this sport. And of course, they're also defending, such as smacking the ball out of the air, ensuring that the other team can't score in their goal. And in this game, there is no equipment given to any team. That means no protective wear, of which you can ever wear, no helmets, basically no nothing. And this game consists of two 30-minute halves consisting with a intermission in between. Next slide. Let me just give you some quick history before I get into the rules and the regulations of this game. So, quick history. Handball was actually first developed, basically, in Europe in around the 1920s. This game, it first started with, as I've already mentioned, an 11-man outdoor team. And this game actually entered the Olympics in 1936. And around that time, it kept on going. However, it was dropped later due to some other reasons. But because it was because of it, the game changing over time, because of the game change, it eventually adapted itself into a 7-man indoor game instead of an outdoor game. It turned from an 11-man outdoor into a 7-man indoor game, which brought it back into the Olympics in 1972. Before you move on to the next slide, if you take a look into the image right in the slides right here, you can see, as I was already mentioning, how there is a big rectangular goal right there. If you guys see it right there, it's in white and black, basically. And that goal is basically what the other team is trying to score into. And though it's actually kind of hard to make out, the ball is I'm not going to actually tell you where the ball is. It's basically near the goal, pretty much. It's near where the red guy is. But yeah. Move on to the next slide, please. Now, let's get into the bulk of this game. Now, as I've already mentioned, the ball is moved by passing, dribbling, or hitting the ball with any part of your body above your knee. You may not kick the ball unless if you are the goalie. If you're the goalie, then you may kick the ball. However, otherwise, you are not allowed to hit the ball with anything under your knee. This will cause an immediate turnover and give the enemies the ball. Or if, let's say, you're defending, let's say if I'm defending and somebody else is coming at me with a ball and I kick it, that is actually a violation of the rules, and they get a free pass. Or free throw, depends on how close they are to the goal. Anyways, let's move on to the next one. Taking more than 3 steps with the ball also causes you to cause a turnover. Basically, what I mean by this is, let's say you can only take 3 dribbles with the ball. So basically that means that you have to be constantly passing it. That's the general gist of what I'm trying to get to. So you can take 3 strides, usually very quick and brief strides. Basically, you take 3 strides down the court, you pass it off to somebody else, they take it, while you run down the court. So let's say I'm running down the court, right? I'm running down the court, 1, 2, 3. I pass it over to my friend. My friend takes it. He's going down 3 while I'm sprinting to the other side. He then finishes his 3. He passes it down to me. I grab it. I shoot it into the goal. That is basically the general gist of how you play it. Of course, there are a lot more factors into how to play this, such as the defenders, the goalie, some of the other rules and regulations of which you have to follow. However, that is generally how it's played. And so, as I've already mentioned, please do not go on to the next slide. As I've already mentioned, if you take more than 3 steps or you hold it for longer than 3 seconds, you usually will cause a turnover. And basically this 3-second rule, along with the 3 stride rules, it keeps the game going at an extremely fast pace, making the game having the ball continuously moving and moving and moving. If you looked at, actually, let's go on to the next rule. It'll make more sense later. But basically, attacking players must shoot their shots at the goal from outside a arc. Now, if you look into the images that I have provided below, especially the one on the left, you can see how there is an orange arc, or basically the orange area right outside the goal on the left side, on the left image. Basically, that orange arc is where you must take your shots. And this area is only where the only place of which the goalkeeper, the only person who can stand inside it is the goalkeeper. However, there is a kind of an exception to this where you can't actually jump into the arc, basically. You can jump into the arc. You just have to shoot the ball before you land onto the ground, or else it's a no-go. So basically, attackers must take their shots at the goal from outside an arc placed on the playing surface, which only the defending goalkeeper may play. That's what I've already mentioned. Of course, the goalkeeper can only play inside this. You can sometimes, if you don't touch the inside of the arc, technically you're not in the arc in this case. So just don't touch the inside of the arc if you want to take the shot. There are also free throws and passes awarded to minor violations, as I've already also mentioned. When I was talking about remember how I was talking about if you maybe kick it with your foot, this might actually, no, not the kick. This is mainly to do with some of the other smaller rules of which I haven't yet mentioned. However, I don't want to go too in depth about this because there's a whole list of rules of which you have to cover. However, this is the general gist of it. So some of those minor rules, if you break them, you will cause a free throw. Free throw does not usually mean free throw at the goal. That usually means you basically are open, and I don't think you're live in this case. When I mean live, I mean like you're not. If you shoot the ball, it won't count even if you score. Basically, that means that you have to pass it to somebody else and get the ball back in order to shoot it if you want to shoot it. But basically, you get a free throw. That means usually you pass it to a friend. Free pass, basically. And for bigger violations of this code, usually you are given a free throw, as in a free shot at the goal. This is for more serious infractions and are taken at the penalty marker outside of the goal. If you actually look at both, I mean, you can see it better in the right side image. You can see how there's a dotted line right outside a bold line. That dotted line, I'm pretty sure, is where you're supposed to take your free shot from. And yeah, that's for more serious infractions, causing you to basically throw the ball from that distance. And let's see, let me just make sure I've covered everything in order. Yes. Okay. So as I've already mentioned, let's get over a brief review. 1, you may not shoot from inside of the bolded area. I'm going to call it the bolded area or the goalkeeper's area. You may not shoot from there, and the only one who can actually play inside there is the goalie himself. Not even his teammates can go in there, which is, as you can see, that's how important it is. And if you break the rules, you can either get a free pass or you get a free throw, as in you get a free throw from the dotted line at the outside. Remember, if you want to be playing this game, you do not want to be holding it more than 3 steps or 3 seconds, or else you will immediately give it to the other team. And you do not want to kick the ball unless if you are the goalie, as that will also cause a turnover or possibly a major infraction. Thank you. Gary?
Yeah. Croquet. What is croquet? Croquet is a sport that involves hitting wooden or plastic balls with a mouth through hoops, often called wickets in the United States, embedded in a grass playing court. Each player takes a croquet mallet and must only use the striking end, not the side, when moving the ball through the croquet wickets. Hitting the croquet ball with the croquet mallet, you move through the court, scoring point for each croquet wicket, and stake made in the correct order.
Overview. Lacrosse is a game about passing a ball into a goal, which you have to carry the ball with a lacrosse stick. Players use the top of the stick, which is a net, to carry, pass, catch, and score the ball into the goal. There are 4 variations of the sport: field, box, women, and intercross. In field lacrosse, all men need to wear protective equipment because it's a contact sport. Box lacrosse is the indoor version of field lacrosse. In women's lacrosse, you're not allowed to make bodily contact, but allow stick-to-stick contact. Intercross allows both genders and includes a softer ball, a yellow plastic stick, but bodily contact isn't allowed.